So it's been a minute since I uploaded a video on this channel. I apologize for that, but basically what I can chalk it up to is that March was just a really busy month for me. I had a lot of different stuff going on. I just got a job recently, so I've been working a lot. I'm also still in college, and I've had a lot of assignments and exams to study for over the past few weeks. And I don't really talk about a lot of this stuff over here, but I'm also very involved in political activism and community projects around where I live. And recently we just organized a food drive, and that was really hectic and stressful, and I had to put a lot of time into that. So basically, with all these different projects and stuff, I wasn't able to put effort into making these kinds of videos. But in order to make up for the stuff that I wasn't able to cover over the past month, I thought I would introduce a new segment on this channel that I might be bringing back in the future called Review Roundup. And basically what this is going to be is just me covering all the things that I missed and that I want to talk about on this channel in a smaller, more condensed review, because I really just don't have time to make individual videos about all these things. But these are still things that I really want to talk about over here. So with all that being said, let's get to it. First, we have Raya and the Last Dragon. This movie comes to us from Disney Animation, and it's directed by one of the directors of Big Hero 6 and also one of the co-directors of Blindspotting, a movie that came out in 2018, which was very underrated. If you haven't checked it out, you definitely should. I'll just get straight to the point here. This is probably the best movie I've seen from Disney Animation in years. I loved Raya and the Last Dragon. I thought it was a very exciting movie, especially from an action standpoint. There's some really well-directed sequences throughout the film. The animation is absolutely flawless, and it's gorgeous to look at. I really love the look and feel of this movie and all the different kingdoms that it takes place in. They could have spent a little more time going to all these different places in the film just to flesh out the setting a little bit more, but I do really like how this movie looks. There's this one area that really stuck out to me where Raya and this other character have a fight in this like snowy village kingdom, and I thought that was really cool. All the colors just really like pop off the screen, and it just has a very nice look. And again, the action sequences are very well directed, and I was surprised at just how into them I got. The score by James Newton Howard can be very moving at times, but it also really adds a lot of excitement to some of the action scenes. And for the most part, I love the voice work too. I thought Kelly Marie Tran did a great job as Raya, and she added a very likable presence to that character. Awkwafina as Sisu the dragon was pretty funny. The film also has a really nice message about coming together in times of crisis, and I think that's a very important message, especially right now. I was really impressed with Raya and the Last Dragon as a whole. I think it's a very exciting movie with a great score, great characters. The action sequences are terrific. It definitely has some issues. For example, I think some of the events that happen in the first hour are very predictable for a movie like this, and you can kind of see them coming from a mile away. And the humor was kind of a mixed bag for me. There's some jokes in the film where they'll reference things in our world, like there's a joke about group projects and stuff like that. And I don't know, it just kind of took me out of the movie because the film takes place in like this ancient kingdom. But still, Raya and the Last Dragon is a terrific movie, and for me, it's the first great film that I've seen in 2021. And this is probably the best thing I've seen from Disney since Zootopia. I'm going to give Raya and the Last Dragon an 8 out of 10. Next we have Coming to America, which is the sequel to Coming to America, but this is like Coming to America, like the number 2, and the first one is Coming to America, like T-O, so take that as you will. I'm a big fan of Eddie Murphy, and after Dolomite Is My Name, I pretty much wanted to get my hands on anything else that he was doing in the future. That was such a great comeback for him, and probably the best that he's been in years. So that was one of the reasons I was looking forward to this film, but also I did see the original Coming to America for the first time, and I really loved it. I thought it had a great performance from Eddie Murphy, and it's not necessarily the funniest movie that I've ever seen, but it's just a nice, simple, wholesome comedy from the 80s, and I did really like it. But the sequel is directed by Craig Brewer, who also worked with Eddie Murphy on Dolomite Is My Name. So with these guys working together again, I thought it was going to be great, right? Not really. Unfortunately, Coming to America is a very mediocre movie. Probably my biggest issue with this film is that really all I wanted with a Coming to America sequel was to see Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall back on screen together again and just going on another adventure. But for some reason, they're not in this movie anywhere near as much as they should be. Instead of focusing on those characters, the film chooses to focus on Akeem's illegitimate son, who he finds in America, and he brings him back to Zamunda so he can be crowned the prince. And so the movie's basically just this guy learning how to become the prince and going through all these trials and tribulations in order to be crowned, which is pretty much the last thing I wanted to see in a Coming to America sequel. At the same time, I get that you don't want to just retread the events of the original and you want to try something different, but I still just wish we focused on Eddie and Arsenio instead of this guy that has barely any of the charisma that those two actors have. Also, the movie felt incredibly safe as well. If you go back and watch the original Coming to America, that's a very rated R movie, especially for its time. But this film is PG-13, and there's literally a scene where Eddie Murphy's like, "I am the MFing king." And that just feels so out of character, because we all saw Akeem do this in 1988.
Good morning, my neighbors!
Hey, fuck you!
Yes! Yes! Fuck you too!
So when you watch him say MFing in this new one, it's just like, man, he wouldn't do that. But at the end of the day, it was probably just a big studio decision because they wanted to have it PG-13 to reach more people. But I hate that they did that because I feel like it loses some of the essence of that original movie. However, the movie's not terrible. I just found it aggressively mediocre. If you are a fan of the original Coming to America, there's some pretty funny references and callbacks to it. And even though Eddie and Arsenio are not in the film as much as I'd like them to be, it's still really nice to see them on screen together again. And it's pretty impressive that they got basically the entire original cast to return in this movie. Usually with comedy sequels that are made like decades after the first one, only like one or two people come back, but they basically got everyone to return, which I think is pretty cool. Wesley Snipes is also pretty good in the film. I thought he was pretty funny and he added a great energy to the movie, but other than that, there's not much more I can recommend about Coming to America. I wasn't really into what they did with the story, and the movie just didn't make me laugh that much. It does have some really funny references to the original, but if all you have to keep me invested in a comedy sequel is nostalgia for the first one, you gotta do better than that. I'm gonna give Coming to America a 6 out of 10. Next we have Cherry. This movie's directed by the Russo brothers and stars Tom Holland as someone who is a college dropout who then goes into the army and comes back with PTSD. And then we kind of follow him as he turns into a bank robber. That's a very oversimplified version of this plot, but it's kind of the best way I can explain it. This movie just did not do it for me. And unfortunately, I think a big part of the reason why is because the Russo brothers just weren't the right choice for it. I'm a big fan of them, and the movies that they directed in the MCU are probably my favorite movies in the MCU. But they just did some really weird stuff here. Cherry is the kind of movie where every other scene there's some crazy stylistic choice that just really takes you out of the experience. And I think some people might like that. I do appreciate that the Russo brothers were trying to create something that was really subversive and different after making some movies that a lot of people complain are too formulaic. But you also have to do it in a way that works, and a lot of the choices here just did not work for me. Throughout the movie, there's these constantly changing aspect ratios, and sometimes the camera will be like in this red hue, and then it'll go to a white hue, and then it'll go back to normal. And there's also this constant narration throughout the film that I thought was just completely unnecessary. You use narration in your film only if something has to be conveyed through a character giving a voiceover and that you can't show on screen. But throughout this movie, it feels like Tom Holland is just explaining everything that's happening to us that we're just watching play out on screen. So I just felt like it was a really misguided choice. And that goes for a lot of the choices in this movie. There's a scene where he's getting a colonoscopy, and they actually had a shot where it looks like it's in his ass. That was so jarring to me, and there's stuff like that all throughout the movie. So it was really hard for any kind of message to cut through because there's all these crazy stylistic choices happening every 2 seconds. But what I will say is that Tom Holland pretty much saves this movie. He's very good here, and he gives a very emotional performance. So he was kind of the reason I kept wanting to watch it. He's obviously a very gifted actor and definitely knows what he's doing. But as a whole, there's not much more I can say about Cherry. It's a very weird movie, and if you like weird movies, then maybe you should check it out, but I don't know, it just didn't really work for me. I'm gonna give Cherry a 5 out of 10. And now we have Zack Snyder's Justice League. I'm guessing the majority of you already know about the history of this film, how the 2017 Justice League movie had a very rocky production, and Zack Snyder had to leave midway through it, so they got Joss Whedon to come in and do reshoots and basically finish the movie. And he changed it considerably from Zack Snyder's original vision, and when I saw it in 2017, I thought it was just kind of okay, and I never watched it again. It was obviously a very forgettable movie. But after a massive fan campaign and a ton of hashtags on Twitter, Warner Brothers finally caved and let Zack Snyder make the movie that he wanted to make with complete creative control, and it's now on HBO Max in a 4-hour-long cut, which I watched in 2 sittings. I watched like the first hour of it in the first sitting, and then I took a break and I came back and finished it. I'll be honest, I really wasn't looking forward to this movie. It seemed like everybody was just screaming online about the Snyder Cut for years, and I was very much on the outside looking in. I didn't think that Justice League was going to be that much better if you just let Zack Snyder do whatever he wanted with it, and especially make it 4 hours long. Because he's always been a very hit or miss director for me, which is why I'm very surprised to say that I really enjoyed the Snyder Cut, and it is worlds better than the 2017 version. And I'm really glad that after everything that happened, Zack Snyder was able to have his vision fully realized, and that fans were able to see it. And one thing that this cut does far better than the original version is that it really takes time to flesh out its characters. You spend a lot more time with Cyborg and Flash. You get to see a lot more of their origins and their history, and as a whole, I just thought it made them a lot more compelling. In particular, Cyborg, what they did with him here was really cool. I thought he was so wasted in the original cut, but I actually ended up really caring about him here. And the movie's shockingly well-paced. The first hour I thought was pretty rough, and I was struggling to get invested in it, but after that, it really picks up, and I was rarely bored throughout the whole rest of the movie. The action sequences are way more fleshed out than they used to be. That scene where Steppenwolf is trying to get the mother box from the Amazonian warriors is really great here. I love what they did with that scene. That big, epic Lord of the Rings battle that was in the original cut is a lot longer, and I really liked seeing that. Also, the finale I thought was really fun. And a quick word about the 4:3 aspect ratio. I know a lot of people didn't like it. I love it. I get that the black bars on the sides of the screen are a little bit distracting, especially for an action movie like this, but it's still an IMAX ratio, and I love the tall frame and seeing everything just looks bigger. It oddly makes some scenes feel bigger than if it had just been in the standard 16:9 format. Zack Snyder has a great eye for visuals, and there's some scenes here that I thought were amazing to look at. There are some things that didn't really work for me, which I'm going to get into spoilers if you haven't seen the Snyder Cut. The Martian Manhunter thing, I really could have done without. I didn't like how Lois and Martha had that really impactful conversation, but then he just leaves and reveals that he's Martian Manhunter, and I don't know, it just felt like it took the weight out of that scene. There were a few scenes at the end that felt a little bit tacked on for me, like that whole nightmare sequence. I didn't feel like any of that was necessary. And also, I could have used a little bit more Batman. I feel like even with this movie being 4 hours long, I didn't get enough of him in the movie. And I really like Ben Affleck as Batman, and I wish he kind of had his moment to shine, but he never did. And with this movie, they could have given him that moment, but I don't know, I just felt like he wasn't in the movie enough. There were some music choices also that felt really out of place for me. But other than that, I really enjoyed the Snyder Cut. I'm glad that Zack Snyder was able to have his creative vision fully realized and that fans got to see it. I'm going to give Zack Snyder's Justice League an 8 out of 10. And last but not least, we have Servant Season 2. If you guys saw my review for the first season, you know that I'm a big fan of this series. I really enjoyed what Tony Bascalop and M. Night Shyamalan did with it. It's pretty much the reason that I have an Apple TV Plus subscription, because it's probably the best thing on that platform as of right now. And I was really excited to see what they were going to do with the second season. The first one ended on a massive cliffhanger, so I couldn't wait to see how they were going to explore more of this world and these characters. And I'll say that this season started off really strong. I really liked what they were doing with Dorothy and Sean. It felt like their characters almost reversed roles in a way, because in the first season, you had Sean, who was taking on this investigative role, trying to figure out what actually happened with this baby, and if it was Leanne's child or if it was somebody else's, and really just trying to get to the bottom of what was going on there. But at the start of this season, you had Dorothy trying to figure out where Jericho went, and she's going all over town trying to get answers and talk to different people. So now you have Dorothy stopping at nothing to figure out where Jericho is and how she can get him back, which is really interesting. But where I think the season really picked up was episodes 3 and 4, which are probably the best in this season. 3 was actually directed by M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, Ishana Shyamalan, which is great to see. Obviously, good storytelling runs in this family's genes because she did an amazing job with 3. I loved seeing how Dorothy and Sean and Julian created this fake pizza shop to hopefully infiltrate this house that Leanne was staying at. It was a really exciting episode, and I loved how it ended. I loved how with this season, Dorothy was just going so insane all the time because she was really driven to her breaking point trying to figure out where Jericho was. And then the next episode, directed by Shyamalan himself, was kind of terrifying because you see just how far she's willing to go to get Jericho back. And she does some really messed up stuff to Leanne, including burying her alive towards the end of the episode, which I really liked how the show was presenting Dorothy as a villain. I thought that was really interesting. But then you also have these great power dynamics between Leanne and Dorothy, how Dorothy will stop at nothing to get Jericho, and she thinks Leanne has the power to bring him back, but Leanne doesn't want to do that for her, so for whatever reason, she's holding that in and keeping things quiet. So you have these characters constantly trying to one-up each other. It made for some really interesting dynamics, and these actors do such a great job. They're both fantastic in the series. However, after episode 4, the show went downhill a little bit for me because it felt like some of these episodes were just really drawn out and that they were always just building to some big reveal that was going to happen at the end. But leading up to that ending, there wasn't a lot going on. Whereas with the first season, I feel like they did such a good job of creating this claustrophobic, eerie vibe with the characters being stuck inside this house the whole time. Here, it feels like they didn't really know where to go with it. So a lot of these episodes felt really drawn out and like not a lot was happening. Especially that one where Uncle George was just like sitting on the couch and snoring, I guess. And Dorothy was just like screaming at him and trying to get answers out of him. It got kind of boring after a while. But the finale was awesome. This is where everything came to a head. It was gory and bloody, and Leanne did a lot of really badass stuff in it. So did Dorothy. The show ended on a really interesting note, and I can't wait to see what they do with the next season and how they explore some of these events. So overall, I thought it was a good season. I thought there were a few episodes in the season that are like the best of the entire show. But after 4, it really started slowing down, and some of these episodes just felt really drawn out. So I would have liked for those to be a little bit more focused and locked in. I'm going to give Servant Season 2 a 7 out of 10. I would almost give it an 8, but I just wish some of these middle episodes were a little bit more focused and eventful like some of the others are. But you can't deny that this show has incredible acting, terrific cinematography, and really great filmmaking. M. Night Shyamalan and Tony Bascalop really know what they're doing with this series, and I can't wait to see where it goes in the future. Whew. All right, I'm all caught up. I feel like that was everything that I wanted to talk about over the past month that I didn't get the chance to, but I'm really glad that I was able to put everything into this smaller, more condensed video, and you can probably expect more of these in the future when I have more things going on. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this. Feel free to let me know your thoughts on any of the stuff I talked about today in the comments below. And you can look forward to more traditional reviews very soon. I should have a review for Godzilla vs. Kong sometime next week. I can't guarantee it, but I'm going to try to put it up. Also, be sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.